Welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in-game. Today's request comes in from the fantastically named Fierce Mushroom, who had a very specific request. They wanted to see a Tarrasque, but they didn't want to see just any Tarrasque, they wanted to see a pirate Tarrasque. A challenge indeed. So what I think I'll do is I'll talk about Tarrasques, I'll draw your standard issue Tarrasque, and then I'll add a little bit of pirate flair at the end for you, because the Tarrasque is fascinating enough whether it's roaming the high seas or not. Now, the Tarrasque joined D&D through the Monster Manual Part 2, released in 1983, and has become a cult classic and a bit of a mystery all at the same time. Gary Gygax, throughout his life, and Wizards of the Coast, honouring his decision, have never concretely confirmed the in-game origins of the Tarrasque, although various settings have sort of looked into that, explored that a little bit. In the game, in your D&D world, the Tarrasque is a bit of a bedtime story, told to children to stop them from wandering too far from the safety of city walls. Its name is like a splinter niggling away, hidden in the back of your mind. It's in the nightmares and inescapable worries of even the oldest dragons. Possibly the most feared creature in Dungeons & Dragons, and as such, its name is carried through rumours and folktales across many different planets. Some claim that the Tarrasque is a curse of gods, just like the mighty Kraken. Some say that they were handcrafted by particularly vindictive primordials. Others say that they must be the work of evil wizards, perhaps mutating dragons, which made me think of Godzilla, this kind of gargantuan beast, mutated from a simple reptile due to radiation. The wizard angle does seem likely, as it's said in the Monster Manual, that the Tarrasque carries itself like a bird of prey. So just as we know that many of the birds that we see in our modern day world have common ancestry with a lot of the dinosaurs that used to roam the earth, this could be something similar. We know that dinosaurs can be used in the Monster Manual, so the Tarrasque could potentially be some sort of magically altered dinosaur. His face is often illustrated very similarly to that of a T-Rex, something I intend to draw on as I illustrate this creature, but some say in the Spelljammer series that Tarrasques may roam wild and free in huge herds, terrifying thought, on the planet Flax. But what is it? What is a Tarrasque? Let's get to the bottom of that first. Well, the Tarrasque is a gargantuan monstrosity, said to be 50 feet in height and 70 feet in length, but often this is altered from campaign to campaign to do this monster the justice that its fever dream inducing name deserves. For example, I played in a campaign once where we as adventurers travelled through an enormous and elaborate dungeon that actually turned out to be the fossilized remains of an ancient Tarrasque. So knowing how feared this creature is, a lot of us DMs like to play around with how massive this creature is, although the book does technically say 50 feet in height. But it's a gargantuan, scaly, lizard-like biped which weighs hundreds of tons. It's a carnivorous engine of destruction whose modus operandi seems to be to lay siege to whole cities, crumbling entire civilizations to dust. It even has a feature in its stat sheet called Siege Monster, which means that its attacks deal double damage to objects and structures. So if you, like me, are picturing reflavoring this creature somehow to fit an Attack on Titan style story, then your mind is certainly in the right place. The Tarrasque is said to be a solitary creature, not out of loneliness or being a bit of an introvert, but it's believed to be the only one that exists, at least on any given D&D world, i.e. there's supposed to be only one per world, maybe even only one in the universe, who knows, but they're very few and far between, and it waits, usually deep underground, earth and rock moving over the top of it over its limitless lifespan, becoming part of the geographic environment where it slumbers undisturbed until some cosmic call to action causing it to rise from beneath the mountains that have long since formed upon its ancient spine as it goes about its work, finally beginning to reduce a planet to rubble. Perhaps in that case, the Tarrasque is like a cosmic reset button for civilizations that grow too far. Maybe a Tarrasque attack is what keeps D&D societies so glued to a medieval high fantasy setting. Maybe once something gets too technologically advanced, that is a cue for the Tarrasque to wake up and reduce that civilization back to the ground. Maybe all campaigns, everyone that you, me, every player of D&D ever created, all occurred on the same planet, all wiped clean after our adventures by a slumbering behemoth that is the Tarrasque. The only thing left after this wreckage are fragments of technology that fledgling societies evolving from the ashes of civilization come to know as magic. But who knows? We can remove the tinfoil hats and stop talking about conspiracy theories, I suppose. But what is known for sure is that the Tarrasque is potentially a world-ending horror. It's a challenge rating 30 creature with 25 AC, sorry for spoilers, and it has 33 D20 plus 330 HP. If you're unfamiliar with how monsters work in D&D, you've only played the player side, that might sound a little bit cryptic to you, but basically, it has a lot of health. On top of which, it boasts some pretty impressive stats, including that its strength and constitution are 30. It's immune to fire, poison, and all weapons that are mundane, i.e. non-magical attack. It can't be charmed, frightened, paralyzed, or poisoned, and it seems to be basically immune to magical attacks from spells as well. Because it has magic resistance, which means it automatically takes half damage from magic, and it has legendary resistance, which means that thrice per day it can just choose to succeed on a failed saving throw. On top of which, its armored hide causes magic missiles, and any spell that fires in a line or would use a ranged attack to have some pretty interesting and unprecedented effects. It gets the roll of d6. On a 1 to 5, the Tarrasque is completely unaffected by a spell that meets those previous requirements. But on a 6, it is still unaffected. But in addition, the spell ricochets off of its spiny back, leaving it completely unharmed, and the spell turns back and hits the spellcaster. But that's just speaking to the creature's building-like indestructibility, but when it comes to its destructive potential, it's no slouch either. It can make 5 attacks per turn, which includes a bite that deals 4d12 plus 10 piercing damage, and also has a chance to grapple someone, ready to be swallowed next turn, which includes a second bite attack, acid damage each turn for the foreseeable future if swallowed, unless your friends can manage to deal 60 or more damage to it in a single turn, at which point there's a chance that the Tarrasque will regurgitate you, but only a chance. It might alternatively claw you for 4d8 plus 10 slashing damage, gore you with its enormous horns, has 2 protruding horns on the top of its head, which deal 4d10 plus 10 piercing damage, or it could slam you with its bus-sized tail, dealing 4d6 plus 10 bludgeoning damage. After that, it can also make use of its frightful presence, an ability which causes every creature within 120 feet of it to make a saving throw, or submit to the terror of this creature and flee from the sight of it, repeating this saving throw at the end of each turn, with disadvantage if they can still see the creature. Now, if you'd hoped for some respite after all of that devastation, you are sadly going to be disappointed, because the Tarrasque also has legendary actions. So 3 times per round, it can use one of these abilities at the end of another creature's turn, which includes an attack of its choice, one of the ones I mentioned before. It can move, so it can hunt prey, or it has a choice between making a bite or a swallow attack. So if you've been bitten on its turn and you are grappled, it can just choose to swallow you at the end of your turn, maybe even in the turn preceding yours, potentially taking out another party member from the game before they've even had a chance to have their turn. So I think we can begin to appreciate the terror that this creature induces in the people of your world. But the name, Tarrasque, it seems like an odd one to just pull from your head. It seems like an odd thing for Gary Gygax to conjure. Now, prior to doing any research on this, I had not heard of a Tarrasque outside of D&D. I was so familiar with this image that I'd built up in my head of what a Tarrasque is because of D&D that I had simply never really thought to research it and look into where it came from historically, what inspired Gary to put it in D&D. But much to my surprise, the Tarrasque is actually a legendary creature from French mythology. It exists. In those stories, it's spelled Tarasque, so it only has 1 R, and is still absolutely enormous, and it's a kind of hybrid dragon with the head of a lion, 6 short legs that apparently resemble a bear's, and an ox's torso, all covered by a tortoise's shell. It also had a scaly serpent's tail that ended in a barbed scorpion's sting. A very bizarre beast indeed. There's a story called The Golden Legend by Jacobus de Varenne, written in 1260, and was a cult classic in the medieval era. At one point in its many thousands of manuscripts, it tells the story of St. Martha, who witnessed the Tarrasque laying siege to Provence in southern France. The creature had carved a path of destruction all the way from Galatea, which is essentially ancient Greece, basically. The king of Nerluc had attempted to kill the beast with knights and siege weapons, and everything that he had at his disposal, but everything fell before the power of the Tarrasque. So he beseeched St. Martha to slay the monster, but seeing the futility in this, St. Martha decided to take a closer look at the creature, and after observing it, she saw that there was a kind of charming intelligence to it. It wasn't just randomly destructive, it was thinking. So using her knowledge of hymns and prayers, she sang to the beast, which calmed it, and eventually managed to charm it. The creature became tame, and essentially a gargantuan pet of St. Martha's. Once calmed, she led the creature to an empty spot of land near Montpellier, where she cared for it. Mortified by their actions, having tried to kill the now tamed creature, they had no idea it could be tamed, but then they didn't stop to think about it either. The people of France built a city around the beast and named it Tarrasque, where it lived peacefully and eventually died there. Now, interestingly, Tarrasque is a real town in southern France, exactly where this story indicates, between Montpellier and Provence. And Tarrasque's coat of arms features the Tarrasque, the creature, and every year they tell the story of St. Martha and her dragon, often with a parade featuring fiberglass Tarrasques led through the streets. These streets also often adorned and decorated with stone gargoyle-like monuments, all depicting Tarrasques. So I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. It was a massive eye-opener for me. I am utterly new to French mythology, but now I know I need to do a lot more reading into it. So thank you for joining me on this quest of discovery. This was a really fun one to draw. It was really challenging, actually, to shape the body of the beast. I initially started with a kind of T-Rex in my head, but then when you put a tortoiseshell over the top of that, you don't quite get the lithe body, the bird-like frame of a T-Rex. It ends up becoming a bit more like Bowser, a bit more chunky, very, very long arms. So it's a bit ungainly looking, but hopefully harks back to the Tarrasque that we all have in our heads a little bit. But anyway, I'm a man of my word. Fierce Mushroom, you wanted a pirate Tarrasque, and a pirate Tarrasque you shall have. So here ye be, ye landlubbers. It be taking a full forest of trees to be making the peg leg on that one, and the gods only be knowing what size that creature be taking in a shirt. Anywho, if ye be knowing of any creatures that ye fancy seeing me draw and talk about, then make sure to leave them in the comment section below. And if ye be wanting some sea shanties and a bit of grog, then make sure to check out me Facebook, me Twitter, me Instagram, and also me Patreon page, which not be for the ordinary landlubber. Until next time, yo ho me hearties, yo ho!